Hi, my name is Anna. I recently just moved back to good old Portsmouth, Virginia, and there's someone else from Portsmouth, Virginia that is really cool. Her name is Cleo Virginia Andrews, VC Andrews. Um, and I'd like to tell you a bit about her. So let's get into it. To start off, who is VC Andrews, and what did she do? When I think of VC Andrews, I think of a moldy sheet cake with a not renovated since the 80s Food Lion, or even better, Piggly Wiggly, with a horrible, dingy, fluorescent yellow lighting with the lens of being a child. Feeling somewhat unnerved, and you don't know if it's because of the lighting or the knowledge that there's probably various dead bug carcasses decaying in the fixture, or maybe it's the people passing you in the elongated aisles with seemingly permanent scowls on their faces while they move to get their, while aesthetically pleasing, bland and tasteless produce. The drive home also being one that sticks with you for a very long time despite its mundanity. Um, those are my thoughts, but what of Andrews herself? Cleo Virginia Andrews, V.C. Andrews, was an American writer from Portsmouth, Virginia. Her best-selling stories included My Sweet Adriana and two series of books about the Dollenganger and Castile families. And everybody kind of knows about Flowers in the Attic because it's very taboo, and I feel like that's everybody's first introduction to rather risque media, or at least the concept of like incest as like actually terrifying in media. Yeah, obviously in real life it's fucking scary, and in media it's fucking scary, but really, really scary. There are a couple quirks when it comes to VC Andrews. She was very weirdly reclusive about her age. At the time, nobody was really able to pin down just how old she was or wasn't, giving another layer of mystery to an already reclusive woman. She had severe rheumatoid arthritis, which essentially rendered her immobile for much of her life. While we don't know exactly what happened, her sister-in-law Mary remembers being told that Virginia had taken the wrong step on the stairway at Woodrow Wilson High School, which resulted in her badly twisting her hip. How? Quote, My husband Gene had found out that the doctor who examined her after she complained of persistent pain believed the twist had been violent enough to tear a membrane on his sister's hip. Spooky wookie. Also, this is just a side note. I didn't know that she had a brother. In most of the articles I've read, there's little to no mention of her having family outside of her father and mother. So this is odd. I also visited her gravesite.
Sure, that's her. That could be anybody.
And there was no brother. He could very much well be alive today, but there wasn't even like a plot for him. But maybe he had his own things going on. I don't know. I'll revisit that. Eventually, after more physicians examined her, the conclusion was that she had started to develop little bone spurs. We do know that she underwent. We do know that she underwent two surgeries that would leave her in a full body cast at one point in her life. That's hell. There was also confusion due to the fact that Virginia's mother told people that she was, quote, pushed down the stairs in high school, permanently disabling her. It was those jealous girls, end quote. At this point, Andrews would take up painting to occupy her time while she was bedridden, and here are some of her paintings. I think that her paintings are really interesting because they really are reminiscent and kind of just overall the aesthetic of what I think she was going for in the Dollenganger series. Um, Again, just this weird childlike cuteness, but it's sinister as well. I think it's the eyes. The eyes are what really get me. There were also issues of doctors not treating her pain seriously, saying, quote, as she described the issue in a number of interviews and in her conversations with family, doctors told her that she walked too gracefully to actually be in so much pain. Quote, I found out that looking too good is a terrible way to go into a doctor's office. They don't take you seriously. So, women's pain, once again, being trivialized. After healing enough to be mobile again, albeit in a wheelchair, her mother Lillian had this to say, quote, let's not allow anyone to see my afflicted daughter, end quote. And if you couldn't guess it now already, V.C. Andrews had a very strained relationship with her mother. A lot of people described it as being a somewhat Norman Bates type of situation without like the sexual undertones, but like the thought of, you know, a mother taking care of her child like well into her adult years also just very reminiscent of a lot of her stories. It's like, yeah, of course, it's her life, dude. But yes, Andrew's mother was extremely ashamed and embarrassed of her daughter's disability, and there is an account of her deliberately hiding her behind the conifer trees in her front yard to hide Andrews from the view of neighbors. Andrews appeared to internalize her mother's views, as in subsequent interviews, when asked about her condition, she would push back, saying that that they wanted to paint her as, quote, some sort of paralyzed creature struggling to type out her fantasies, end quote. She saw herself being depicted as, quote, the humpback of the church of bestsellers, a creature dressed in beautiful clothes to distract the viewer from seeing the abnormalities, end quote. She writes so beautifully. I love her. She's a Virginia girly just like me. To this day, we actually still don't know how much her disability affected her daily life or to what extent she was, if she was at all, dramatizing her condition. She almost always refused to discuss it, and it was almost like she held the belief that if she did not talk about it, it didn't exist. There was a lighter side, though. Virginia's niece Suzanne recalled that her aunt enjoyed toying with the press about her condition. Tired of being asked relentlessly, she would say that she was planning to undergo new and dangerous surgeries that would cure her entirely. And while she was having corrective surgery, one doctor had a stroke and accidentally cut off the socket of her right hip. So she was just blatantly lying to interviewers, and that's pretty based. I think that's cool. These people were incredibly invasive, and she didn't have to tell them anything. But lies, she told lies. So, despite her promising artistic talent, she did face adversity in her early years. She persevered, though, by completing a 4-year correspondence course from her home, eventually establishing herself as a successful commercial artist, illustrator, and portrait painter. She used the income from her art commissions to support her family after her father's passing in 1957. Later in life, she ventured into writing. Her initial novel, quote, Gods of Green Mountain, end quote, a science fiction work, remained unpublished during her lifetime, but was eventually re-released as an ebook in 2004. Also, side note, Andrews did have a ghostwriter for most of her career. I think it also just came with the territory of she was, again, largely immobile and she needed, you know, help finishing. Uh, just like from a ability standpoint. It's not that she was like unable to do it, but like she just needed help getting it out. In 1975, she penned a manuscript for a novel titled Flowers in the Attic. Remarkably, she completed the initial draft in just 2 weeks. Although her first submission was met with suggestions to enrich and expand the story, she claimed to have made the necessary revisions in a single night. The novel was published in 1979 while she was 56, and I still also think that's amazing because there is a lot of pressure to constantly put out content in media, when you're younger, because there's just like the youth question and aspect, but she did it at 56, and that was her most famous, work. Published in 1979 and quickly soared to the top of the bestseller list within 2 weeks. From that point onward until her passing, she published a new novel every single year. Each publication brought her larger advances and a growing readership. In a 1985 interview, she says, quote, I believe in telling a captivating story without meandering into excessive descriptive material. When I read, if a book fails to maintain my interest in what happens next, I set it aside and never finish it. Therefore, I'm committed to ensuring that no one sets down one of my books without completing it. My work is a quick and engaging read. Love that. She knew our attention spans weren't big enough. In a 1983 interview with Twilight magazine, she was asked about critics' responses to her work. She responded, quote, I pay no heed to critics. I once did until I discovered that most critics are aspiring writers who envy my published works. Furthermore, I don't believe anyone who cares about their opinions, nor should they. What an icon. She's the queen of not giving a fuck. She won the I don't give a fuck wars.
VC Andrew stands for voracious, can't get 'em Cleo.
Unfortunately, in 1986, Andrews did succumb to her long battle with breast cancer. She passed away in Virginia Beach. Following her passing, her family enlisted the services of a ghostwriter, Andrew Niederman, to complete the manuscripts she had initiated. Niederman would go on to finish the next two novels, Garden of Shadows and Fallen Hearts, which were published shortly thereafter. These two novels are regarded as the final works published under the V.C. Andrews name and are believed to have been almost entirely written by Andrews herself. And fun fact, there are technically still V.C. Andrews related content and material still being produced to this day, almost 40 years after her passing. And that is astonishing to me. Recently on TikTok, there has been a growing fascination with Southern Gothic and the allure of Old South horror. The legacy of slavery, the erosion of the family unit, was it even there in the first place, or was it the mutual suffering of people who came out of each other under a patriarchal tyrant? In the vast landscape that bleeds poverty that was once flourishing due to the legacy of slavery. Simply enough, I do feel that the prologue from her acclaimed Flowers in the Attic novel best describes the aesthetic and vibe that she sets. Quote, "It is so appropriate to color hope yellow, like that sun we seldom saw, and as I began to copy from the old memorandum journals that I kept for so long, a title comes as if inspired. Open the window and stand in the sunshine. Yet I hesitate to name our story that, for I think of us more as flowers in the attic, paper flowers, born so brightly colored and fading duller through all these long, grim, dreary, nightmarish days where we were held prisoners of hope and kept captives by greed. But we were never to color even one of our paper blossoms yellow." And even just reading this, it perfectly encapsulates the purposelessness and nihilism that comes with being trapped in a place where you know that there is no room for growth, no way to escape, no chance at social mobility, a la many places in the South. The fashion that you can also see in the film adaptations of Andrews' works are also in line with the 2013-2014 Tumblr resurgence that we're seeing right now. We all know pastel grunge and hipster twee fashions, but there's also a sub fashion of that. And I was a part of this, and I didn't know it was problematic because I was legit 13 or 14 at the time, so sue me, kill me, I'm sorry, I've made my peace. I was a baby. But the nymphette aesthetic, which is more so now called the coquette aesthetic, which is good. I'm glad we're moving away from the previous term. But from this, we have even further down Marut culture. Marut meaning morbid and cute. This style of fashion utilizes a lot of Southern Gothic trends. We can see crosses, broken baby dolls, visuals suggesting abuse, essay, precociousness under the guise of childlike, dreamy imagery that harkens back to a girlhood ripped away from you. Heavy stuff. And the forerunners of this aesthetic were photographer Jess Woods and singer Nicole Dollanganger. And if you didn't catch that, that's a direct reference to Flowers in the Attic, the Dollanganger series as a whole. And this is, again, being somewhat revived with singers like Ethel Cain nowadays. I personally don't know a lot about Ethel Cain, but from what I did see, there is a lot of overlap. And looking her up on Pinterest, that is so V.C. Andrews pilled. Oh my goodness, this is so when V.C. Andrews has petals in the wind. This is so when there's old money that is being thrown away in the South right now. And this is me just kind of remembering that I did not really film an outro. So thank you for listening, and here's some extra footage as well as the marker on the back of V.C. Andrews's grave. Books opened doors I hadn't even realized were there. They took me up and out of myself, back to the past, forward to the future, put me on the moon, placed me in palaces and jungles everywhere. When finally I did reach London and Paris, I'd been there before. When books fail to give me what I need, dreams supply the rest. A long time ago, I dreamed I was rich and famous, and I saw flowers growing in the attic. Dreams can come true no matter what obstacles fate chooses to place as obstacles to hurdle, crawl under, or go around. Somehow I always manage to reach the far side. What else can I say? I have a goal and achieve it, despite everything is my only accomplishment. If I give a few million readers pleasure and escape along the way, I do the same for myself. Yours, Virginia C. Andrews.